All right, we'll get our screen share going.
So Tina, will the recording be on your YouTube channel or do you just send it out to people?
Yes, it will be on the YouTube channel, and we have a few of the past sessions just waiting to be posted, actually. It's on my to-do list, so there's going to be more sessions coming up very soon in the next week or two. Yeah, and this one will be one of them.
The other thing to take note of is we also plan to be putting them in the Poplar community in its own. We do have a video resources section. So they're not all there yet, but we do have that plan to slot them in there. So it's sort of an easy access. Those of you that are regularly in the community, you could see all of our videos posted there.
Yeah, and we'll be sharing them with the BC Lung Foundation, and they will share it on their website too. So it should be very findable once they're up. All right, let's get this party started. So, welcome to the Better Breathers Club of British Columbia. Here we are, brought to you by Poplar Pulmonary Wellness and the BC Lung Foundation. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Coast Salish people. These are the unceded ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And if you'd like to post the ancestral lands in which you live, work, and play in the chat, please do so. We always like to hear where people are joining us from. And we like to create a safe space during these Better Breathers clubs, so feel free to share your thoughts, values, and opinions, and to ask questions without fear of judgment. So we thank everybody here in advance for creating this safe space for everyone. And as a reminder, the information shared here is for educational purposes only. It does not substitute professional medical advice from a healthcare provider. And I'll turn over to you, Jenna, to get our topic started.
That's right. So today we're talking about calming the fight or flight response. So we're going to learn all about that response, and I thought why not start with the story? Once upon a time, and we're going to learn about something called our autonomic nervous system. So has anyone heard of this before? Our autonomic nervous system. Seeing a couple little nods, maybe. We all have it. And sometimes we don't even know it kicks in because it's meant to do so automatically. So it is a peripheral nervous system, so nerves that run all throughout our body. And it's in charge of our automatic responses. And I've put some of those responses in a list there. Things like our breathing rate, we don't have to think of when to breathe. We just kind of do it. Same thing with our heart rate, same thing with blood pressure, same thing with opening of vessels and airways and things like digestion. So these are things our body is sort of taken out of our consciousness and kind of does for us automatically through the autonomic nervous system. And in this nervous system, we've got a bit of a split personality. And if we think back to prehistoric times, time spent in the cave, if you will, there are two types of nervous systems that fall under this autonomic nervous system. And the one is the fight or flight, the one on the left. You see the person running. So this taps into our sympathetic nervous system. And this system is innervated throughout every tissue in our body and is highly connected to our skeletal muscle system. So this sympathetic nervous system is meant to get us to act very quickly. So it brings about attention or awareness and activity. And so it will innervate those parts of the body then to be able to do that. And so we might notice things like an increase in our heart rate, an increase in blood pressure, our breathing rate goes up, We get more blood sugar in our bloodstream to help us to be able to act. And then things that we don't generally need, like we don't really need to be digesting food during that time. So things in our gut tends to stop or slow down. Um, and then we have the other side, our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest or digest nervous system. So after that threat is gone, the woolly mammoth is no longer, or whatever it was that was threatening us, we can rest and relax. And so our nervous system is then built to send signals to be able to do that. And it's mostly this nervous system mostly innervates in our head and our viscera, like our organs, mostly in our abdominal area, not really found in our musculoskeletal system. And 75% of it is innervated through the vagus nerve. And so maybe you've heard of that before, the vagus nerve. Highly connected to our parasympathetic nervous system, runs from our brain stem, our breathing center, all the way through down through our thoracic area and then into our abdominal area. And so through this pathway, then we could reduce the things that made us go into fight or flight. We can calm our heart rate. We could calm our blood pressure, our respiratory rate. The blood sugars stop getting pumped into our bloodstream, and we could restart our GI, so the peristalsis or the movement through our intestines that begins to restart again. Any
I
questions about
like
this part? Yeah, Tina.
I was going to say, we learned this in school when you're studying respiratory therapy, but I really like Jenna that you put this together with those arrows, and I think the arrows are really telling. So sympathetic nervous system, I think like you're getting jacked up, you're getting excited, things are coming up, and then the parasympathetic is things are calming down, like literally calm down with the down arrows. And so, when you're trying to remember what's happening in the body. Um, trying to remember these things. I think the up arrow is getting excited, and this is the sympathetic nervous system. And I always think, oh, when we're running away from that woolly mammoth or whatever, it's got the sympathy for us. We get to go, and all of these things do help us. Like they're good things, the sympathetic nervous system. If you are being chased by a woolly mammoth, it's so helpful to have a higher heart rate and higher
Yeah.
blood pressure and lots of sugar, right? But then in our society, we don't live with woolly mammoths chasing us. And so then it's this parasympathetic nervous system, the calming, the recovery. And it's a really important part of being healthy is to reach this state of calm, rest, and digest. So both nervous systems are very helpful, but in different situations. So as we kind of carry on with this talk, you'll see how we can help our bodies to go into one or other of these modes.
Awesome. So both of these nervous systems send signals back up to our brain or control center um, to tell that control center what to do. And um, the system that it uses is something called the HPA axis. And HPA stands for the centers that sort of take action in this pathway. So H is for the hypothalamus in our brain, P is for the pituitary gland in our brain, and then A is for adrenal glands, which sit on top of our kidneys like cute little Santa hats in this diagram. And they each have a role. And so the role is, and I'll just provide an example. So remembering that this is the autonomic nervous system. So this is, just think of those times when something, there was an environmental trigger and you had a bodily response that you didn't have to think about. And so the example that first came to my mind, which I've sadly done on more than one occasion, is almost crossing a street on a red light where maybe you're not paying attention and you're about to like step out and then that thing that like pulls you back or just And you feel that really strongly in your body if you think back to a situation like that. And you didn't have to tell yourself to do that. Your body did it. And it did it through this pathway. So what happened was a stimuli was received at the hypothalamus. So this is our control center. And the role of the hypothalamus is to always keep us very balanced. It wants us to be balanced. And so if it has a stimuli that's saying, okay, we're not balanced, we got to act, it will send signals to the pituitary gland. And that purpose of that gland in our brain is to send signals to our hormone glands, our endocrine glands. And the one that it sends this signal to, and there are a lot of different pathways that can happen, but I focused on this pathway specifically. So when it sends a signal to the adrenal glands, it releases a short-term release of cortisol. So this is meant to take care of this short-term stress response. This, I almost crossed into oncoming cars and I needed to react really quickly. And then the thing I'd like you to keep in mind about this cycle, this from the hypothalamus to the pituitary to the adrenal, is that our body is so unique in that that cortisol that gets released out to be able to act and do the things we just discussed from the sympathetic nervous system. So increase the heart rate, get the blood pressure up, get the respiratory rate up, get more glucose in our blood so we can react and keep ourselves safe. That same cortisol, once it's released, sends the signal back to the hypothalamus in a loop. And it's supposed to say, all right, we're safe, we're good, we did the thing, stop this influx of cortisol now. So this is really a loop here between the H, the P, and the A. Cortisol gets released, and then that signal goes back to the hypothalamus. And that's how we deal with these really short-term responses. And so when that signal goes back, it's supposed to tap into our parasympathetic nervous pathway to calm things back down, keep us back into balance to these short-term stressors. Any questions there? Kind of neat that the same pathway that pulls us into action also has a pathway to bring us back to calm. I love that.
Okay.
All right. So I wanted us to do just a little kind of awareness exercise because sometimes part of the issue, and we're going to get into chronic stress in just a little bit, but part of the issue is that we are not always in tune with our bodies. It's an exercise to kind of get there. Takes time, takes practice. But I want you to explore and let us know, and you could do so verbally or in the chat, when you have ever felt a fight or flight response. So if you think back to maybe an emergency you've been through or a fight or flight situation, what did you feel? Let us know. What did you feel? Well, and it could just be one thing.
I feel anxiety, like pins and needles.
Pins and needles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that might be, if I were to take a bit of an educated guess on it. So blood in a fight or flight is always going to go to the core areas, the areas that are going to make us act. That's usually our central body, right? Our heart, our lungs, our skeletal muscles. So that might be that sensation. Yeah. Anyone else?
Jenna, what
For
about
me,
when you feel like you're having shortness of breath?
That's a
yeah,
good one. A lot of people feel that, or a chest
Mhm.
tightness.
yeah.
Mhm.
And that
And
usually causes anxiety as well, right? You think that you may be having a heart attack or
Yep.
exacerbation of your COPD or asthma, and therefore you're worried that it may compromise you. So your breathing goes faster faster. But the thing
Yes.
that we tell most people is to calm down, take 2 deep breaths at a time, just to slow down your sympathetic responses.
That's right. Yeah, man,
Yeah,
you
it's a
read my
good.
mind. You're a couple slides ahead.
Oh,
But
okay, sorry.
I love
I
your no, no,
jumped
I
into
love
this.
your question
Okay.
though, because what I can address with your with your excellent comment there is yeah, the response in our lungs is a big one because what will happen is our airways will dilate because you can imagine in a fight or flight response, you need oxygen, right? All of our tissues, including those that are going to help us in an emergency, need oxygen. So the airways will dilate and the pulmonary vessels will constrict to some degree. And normally, if you have healthy lungs, I'm sure you feel some of that in your chest, right? But when you're compromised and your lung mechanics are a little bit different, you're going to feel that more. That physiology of it, you're going to feel that more. So, yeah, it's a really good point, and we're going to talk about our breath in just a little bit. Yeah,
We have some comments in the chat too. So what do you feel when you feeling that fight or flight response? Heart rate goes up, feeling
Mhm.
tension in the shoulders and the neck. Yeah.
yeah,
Panic, tightness, and shortness of breath. Yeah.
awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And so those symptoms, like especially the tension and the neck and shoulder tension, that I imagine is what many of us also feel when we just feel stress in our body. So this is the second question. So what do you feel when you feel stress in your body? Where do you feel it? And that's a common place, neck and shoulders.
Yeah. We even
Yeah,
have
a
a
lot of
comment here. Perspiration from the head. Yeah,
yeah,
so we get that. Yeah,
yeah,
it's very physical, right? It's physical. There's stuff going on in your body. It's talking to you and you feel the changes.
yeah.
Looking for
All
the
right.
other here. Yeah, okay.
Let's go to the next slide. So like Tina was alluding to, this stress response that keeps us safe, um, in our modern world, these stressors are happening chronically, often daily. And we can end up in this situation where, we end up in chronic low level stress that causes an overactive and dysregulated HPA axis. So, where that loop is supposed to come back and tap into the parasympathetic response and say, okay, we're out of danger, our chronic stresses throughout our life, our day, dysregulates that. And we don't always get that feedback loop happening, calming us again. And this can lead to chronic disease, especially when we think about that our parasympathetic nervous system also innervates a lot of our immune organs in our body, our spleen, our thyroid, our lymph glands. And so a lot of this can lead to this low level of inflammation, which we know can lead to disease. And so I put some of the diseases and disorders here that have been linked to low level stress and this sort of dysregulated HPA. And so I imagine for us, maybe we're experiencing some of this already. Um, and we want to slap ourselves out of it. How can we change this cycle? How can we regulate ourselves again? What do we need to do? So let's figure that out. And, maybe even looking at that list had you feeling a little bit of overwhelm. I know when I look at it, I feel a bit overwhelmed. I don't want to end up here. And sometimes I've shared like my personal experience with asthma. Sometimes I feel like I'm already there, which can be overwhelming living with a chronic lung condition. And so, how do we not feel overwhelmed? What can we do? And so,
Yeah, even
one, Go ahead, Tina. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say it affects the immune system too. We've all experienced it where, you've got a lot going on, you're not getting enough rest or you're not taking enough personal care. Stress levels are going up, and the next thing you know, you get sick. And it's like, you wouldn't have got sick if you weren't so stressed and you weren't so busy, right? Like just even on that
It's
level,
true.
our
Yeah.
bodies are impacted. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good example. So I wanted to offer that one of the first things you can do is something you already know, and we've connected with some of you in our programs already, so you already know this, but it's just the reminder to stop and take a deep breath. Exactly what Men was saying. So and this is a nice tool for if you recognize, if you're in a stressful situation and you recognize the stress in your body, and then you need an action to take to snap yourself out of it. This is a really good one because you could take a moment, you could just take some private time, go to a bathroom, take a moment, and just do some simple deep breathing. And it's a matter of inhaling through your nose, if possible, holding your breath in for a second or two, exhaling slowly through your mouth, taking longer than it took you to breathe in. And I'm going to break this down in the next couple slides physiologically, what is happening in our body when we take each of these steps. But maybe we could just take a moment now as a group to actually do this and remind ourselves that this helps. So just kind of take a moment to just tap into yourself, just see how you feel in this moment. And then when you're ready, take a big breath in through your nose. If it works for you in your lungs to hold it in for a second or two, do that. Exhale slowly. You can use those pursed lips if you like. And again, in through the nose. Big full breath. Hold it in for a second or two. Exhale through those pursed lips. And see how you feel. Do you notice a difference? So this deep breath, this pattern of breathing, gives a signal to our brain signals that we are okay. Okay, and I'll like to show you how it does that in our next slide. Any comments with the breathing pattern? Okay. So this next slide shows lots of different excuse me, variations of essentially using our breathing pathway as a way to reduce stress in our body. And it could be simple pursed lip breathing like we just did. It could be diaphragmatic breathing, one hand on chest, one hand on abdomen, connecting with the diaphragm. It could be through exercise, through yoga, tai chi, meditation, muscle relaxation, even fun things like harmonicas, playing the harmonica or singing. These are all tapping into a very similar response. And I'm simplifying this a little bit because things like exercise have more than one pathway in which it will help us to reduce our stress response. But all of these can be tied to our breathing pathway. And what is happening is when we take these nice big breaths, is we have receptors called mechanoreceptors in our breathing tubes, in our trachea, in the pulmonary vessels. And these mechanoreceptors are looking at things like stretch. How much volume of air is coming into the lungs? What's the respiratory rate like? And if it's is getting the signal that things are calm, there's a nice big volume of air, there's a nice steady respiratory rate, it will send those signals back up to our brain to let us know we're okay. If the signals are coming back sort of stressful. So as some of you mentioned, tension in the neck or shoulders. So we're stiff, we're tight, we're hunched. Maybe we're shallow breathing. Those are going to send signals back to the brain saying, okay, let's up our respiratory drive. We're not getting enough oxygen. So let's increase our respiratory rate. Let's increase the volume, the depth of breath, so we get a bigger breath and more oxygen into our lungs. And that respiratory drive increasing when your lung mechanics are a little bit different because of your chronic lung condition can really set you into a spiral where you're really feeling those increased breathing symptoms, including symptoms like cough, because those mechanoreceptors will can trigger that too. Whereas when we're relaxed, deep breaths, things are steady, then we tap into the parasympathetic. We hit that vagus nerve, and things are nice, calm, and relaxed. We also have receptors called chemoreceptors that are constantly monitoring our oxygen and carbon dioxide in our body. So remember, the purpose of our breathing is to bring in oxygen from the air we breathe, bring it all the way down into those little grape-like structures, those alveoli, those little sacs. The oxygen goes from those little sacs into our bloodstream, where our tissues can use the oxygen from the blood. And then the byproduct of that is carbon dioxide, which we exhale out of our body. So these chemoreceptors, there are some that are found in our vessels, like our carotid arteries here, and there's a big one in our chest, just behind our heart there, the aortic arch. So those receptors are there monitoring mostly oxygen. And then we have receptors in our brain, in our respiratory center of our brain, that mostly monitors carbon dioxide. And so again, if we have a nice flow of breath, steady, deep breaths, nice respiratory rate, we're getting good oxygen, then those receptors are going to be happy and send those signals back to keep going. You're doing great. And if we're in a stress response and we notice that the oxygen is low and the carbon dioxide is up, then it's going to up our respiratory drive too, to try and fix that. So these are the reasons why we do this type of breathing, this pursed-lip type of breathing, because it's really trying to connect with these two different types of receptors to keep us steady. Any questions there? Had you heard that before? Some nodding heads, yeah. You're all well-versed. I love it. In this list, if you go back, Tina, in the list of ways to keep ourselves out of this stress response by using our breath, is there anything that anyone uses that they really, really like? It's like your go-to, or you notice that it does really tap into your, to relieving stress?
The breathing is the main thing for me, and it's a matter of remembering to do it when I need it, because if I'm panicking, say often if I'm walking my dog in the forest and a bunch of dogs off leash come toward us, that sort of
Yeah.
thing, and I'm worried about that, and it's so this is a great reminder to keep that in the front of my brain.
Yeah. I love that, Shirley. Thank you. That is a complete fight or flight situation. Walking your dog and a
Yes.
whole bunch of dogs off leash. I would be fight or flight.
Yeah.
Any?
I'll take an opportunity to share something here too, about these, activating these pathways. And so it's really about doing things that talk back to your brain and that can tell your body to calm down. And I'll take a note from Adrienne Mishler of Yoga with Adrienne. And something that she says pretty regularly in her yoga classes is the way you move matters. And that's something that I've tried to implement to actually increase my parasympathetic nervous tone on days where I'm just really busy and I feel rushed and I know my stress level goes up. I start to feel those signs, that tension in the neck and whatever, and I also start to move differently, I've noticed. I'll maybe hunch over, I'll walk really quickly, I'll be moving things. And one of the things I notice is that I might knock things over or bump my arm into something on those days because I'm rushing too much and I'm not mindful. My body is taking over and I'm letting it. And so I take this note from Adrienne where she says, the way you move matters. And so I just consciously make an effort for me to slow down. And, I'm really not going to save much time in my day if I go from the living room back to the kitchen, hunched over and moving quickly, or just, stand up tall and just walk normally, you know? And when I do that, as soon as I tell myself the way I move matters, it actually talks to my brain. I notice myself relaxing more. I can have like little moments to think more clearly. I think about what I'm doing. If I'm, making a cup of tea, I will, watch I'm pouring the milk in the tea, as opposed to like, quick, open the fridge. Like I'm always thinking of the next step. And so just taking notice of what I'm doing, being mindful of the present moment, just by paying attention to how I move. So it can be that simple. And usually when I start focusing on movement, I will change my breathing too. I'll just start to breathe more slowly. I might take a nice big sigh breath. Sigh breaths are good too. Yeah. So thanks, Yoga with Adrienne.
Yeah, it's
I
not mindfulness stuff. Go ahead, Min.
no, I was just about to say that the most common stressor for people like us, or like Shirley, Bobby, Ginny, or Elsie, is that when you have a doctor's appointment and you're running late and you want to rush out and get into your appointment on time, that's something that always stresses people. So
Yeah.
what we can do, and I always have that in mind, is when you know that you have an appointment with your doctor, make they okay, they want you to wait, but they do not want to wait for you. That's always that matters in most clinics, right? They can have all the excuses that you wait for a long period of time before your turn. However, you should be there on time. So, in order for you not to be stressed out or something like that, where you have your high blood pressure, heart rate going up, breathing going fast, is to make sure that you put yourself or pace yourself, or make sure you go earlier. Like if you know that you have to drive and you drive slowly, instead of 30 minutes, maybe make it an hour to get into your appointment on time. I always notice that, and I always get into an accident when I'm running late. So I wanted to make sure that you don't get into that kind of trouble as well.
Thanks, man. And
Thanks.
you know what? Also, we have another little awesome tip in the chat here. There's a phone app to help with stress, and it's called Breathe or Breath. And you can set it up to suit your needs. So if you wanted to look in your app store there and look for it's either Breath or Breathe. Yeah.
There's also one app, the Calm. Have you
Calm
heard?
is a,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a good
it's
one
got
too. Yeah,
meditations.
just like
Yeah.
Mhm.
meditation or yoga
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I find, sorry, Calm is very expensive and I keep on wanting you to buy money, whatever. One that's really recommended by the mental health is Insight Timer. And it's a
Oh,
Tibetan bowl and it's really, really good. Insight Timer. And you can get that from the App Store. And it's excellent, excellent. And they're not always bugging you to buy something. So it's good.
Thanks, Bobby. I was trying to look it
Awesome.
up on my phone to figure out what that one was called. I
yeah.
agree. Insight Timer is great. Yeah. And people are
I'm
suggesting too that you can have these just different breath patterns set. So when you need it, you got to go to right there in your phone. Awesome. Thank you so much.
There's another one. I when I was putting this together, I had it in my list and then I didn't quite look into it, although I've used it myself. And it's called the tapping solution. Has anyone ever
Hmm.
heard of tapping?
I heard about that though.
Yeah. I enjoy it and I have used it. And the theory behind it is um, you tap certain, they're almost like acupuncture points or, you know, side of the eye, under the nose, chin, collarbone, and it will go through a certain pattern, and it often has like a nice soothing voice. They can be really short, just a couple of minutes, or really long, almost like a meditation session, like 20 minutes or so. Um, and it causes you to stop, turn inwards, focus on yourself and what you feel. I like it that it gets you to kind of rate, like on a scale of 0 to 10, like how are you feeling with your stress, like before you start? And then you do the tapping, and then how do you feel after? And it's always less for me personally. And sometimes I'm like, is it the tapping or is it because I've just taken this moment to focus on myself and deep breathe? And, it's it's like a calming thing. Um, but I didn't get a chance to look into the science behind it, but I want to. And I know it's out there, it is evidence-based. And so maybe I'll add that into our Poplar community, a little information about that. And there's an app called the Tapping Solution, and there's free, um, they call them taps, free taps on there that you can try. Yeah.
I was reading about tapping yesterday, actually. It's funny you mentioned that
Mhm.
in the book by the TikTok trauma doc. And she mentions that tapping, it runs through the same pathways that acupuncture does, or acupressure. So
Yeah.
the spots are not unique to tapping. I guess it is a sort of a known trigger points, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. All right.
Amazing. Amazing.
Um, So then I wanted to offer, so, this is maybe not new, right? It's more of maybe a reminder to us to use what we know, use the mechanisms we know to get us out of the chronic stress response. But in my reading, I came across something new, not really new to us as human beings, because we know that we are very social creatures as human beings. But there's this idea of this stress buffering hypothesis, which offers another way in terms of how we can reduce the negative effects of stress. And it's this idea that research that looked into those of us that had really strong social networks, we can actually buffer the negative effects of stress better, especially in high stress situations. So when you think about it, we are human creatures. We start to buffer or have attachment as soon as we're born to the people who are rearing us. And then when we become young adults, that starts to change a little bit, and we start to look towards our friends as our buffer. And then as we get into adulthood, that changes a little bit again, and we're looking at our partners and supportive, loving relationships. And so, it's not new to us that when we live with a chronic lung condition, for some of us that starts to change because activities that we're able to do start to change. And we might find ourselves in a situation as we get a bit older, our networks change or they get smaller, or we start to find ourselves a little more isolated. So it's a really good reminder to look at our social networks because they can help us to reduce the chronic effects of stress. They can protect our mental health and the physical effects of stress in our body. And they can help us to have better coping mechanisms. And part of this, when they were doing the studies, looked at a stress response. So we've already sort of explained, there's an environmental situation or a stimuli, like if you think of that fight or flight, we have that biological response, so that parasympathetic response. But then after the fact, we have an evaluation of that event, right? We look at the stimulus and the response, and then we decide or think to ourselves, was that traumatizing? Like, is this going to stay with me forever? Like, was that really huge? Or was that just like, oh, that thing happened? And you sort of move on. And we have some control over that. And I guess the studies kind of showed that, the more you had safe spaces around you and a social network or a buffer, then the less these experiences become traumatic to you. And one of the examples that they gave, because I'd heard of this before, so it resonated with me, was, people where they give a pain stimuli, but if they're looking at a picture of a loved one, you don't feel it as much. So it's taps into that same kind of response. And so I thought that was super interesting and really relevant, as seeing as we're here all together in the Better Breathers Club of BC. So thank you, BC Lung, for supporting this group, because it is a safe space for us to kind of come together, and maybe one of our many spaces. So maybe you're finding that in your spiritual groups or your walking groups or your hobbies and things like that. And if we're lacking those things, then maybe it's a call to action to kind of take a look at that too, like do the fun stuff and stay connected to those things and groups that make you happy.
It's a good reminder, Jenna, like we build up our own support system. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any comments or anything to share before we move forward?
Jenna, when you mentioned about the tapping solution, were you relating it to the emotional, I think it's called emotional freedom tapping, the EFT?
I think it's related. Yes, I do believe it's that same idea. But I haven't researched it fully. So if it's okay with you, Jeannie, I want to get back to you on that definitively. Is that okay?
Well, it's kind of a vague memory for me now. It was mentioned to
Yeah.
me in a support group about maybe 8 to 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
I'm not really up on it.
I see Bobby nodding her head. Are you familiar with it, Bobby?
I'm very familiar. I've done a lot of tapping, and my daughter is just really encourages tapping. And I've got one song, 2 songs on my Spotify that have the tapping method in it. So you're what
Nice.
you do when you're going and everything like that. But I haven't really, I got into it, and then of course I'm into something else because there's so much to do.
Yeah.
It was good. I enjoyed it.
Maybe we've replanted the seed.
But Bobby brings up a good point. Like even in our slide before this, there's lots of options, but it is about finding the thing that you feel works for you, right? The thing that feels like Shirley was saying, the thing that's easy to go to in that stressful situation really easily. And so that's why just stopping and breathing is just really simple, just stop and do some pursed lip breathing. But yeah, try them out. There's definitely options, and let us know in the Poplar community too, which ones you resonate with you and which ones you really like.
There is an app
So,
where there's it's like box breathing, but it has different patterns to it, and you can watch this circular bubble or some geometric shape, and as it's going around, you get the idea of either inhaling and holding and exhaling. Quite interesting. I tried it a couple times.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I've actually loaded it on my phone, but when I found it, I was quite mesmerized by it.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. All right, so in the spirit of being social, before we go, we thought, well, we're here, we're all together, why not play a game? And I'm bringing back a game that we played together a couple sessions ago, but it seemed like people were into it, so we're going to do it again. So we're going to play categories. Tina's going to be bringing up our little category. Oh, actually, Tina, why don't we go through what we have coming up, and then we'll end on categories. That way we don't have to come back. Sorry about that. So in terms of looking for more, so if you want to work with a certified respiratory educator on anything we've talked about today, perhaps even just having a look at your breathing technique based on what's going on in your lungs. We do have free 15-minute welcome sessions through the Poplar Clinic. We could do that through video conference or phone call. So feel free to reach out. We didn't get into exercise, but like I mentioned, there's a couple different pathways to reduce stress through exercise. We do have a cardio and stretch class that we have on Thursdays at 10 o'clock, and we have a promotion right now for $40 a month. And this is a nice class because you can get some personalized feedback from a respiratory therapist on your breathing technique through continuous movement. And then if you go to the next slide, Tina, all of these details can be found on our website. And then our next Better Breathers Club of BC will be the second Wednesday of April, which is April 9th at 2 p.m. And we're going to be talking about lung transplant. So we hope you'll be able to join us then as well.
Yeah, we also have some free inhaler workshops coming up this week, Thursday and Fridays at 1 and 2 p.m. Pacific. We're going over the MDI and spacer. So if you're using those, please do join us. Oh, and references. There you go. All right. Can we see that?
Yeah?
Do you see the game? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta hide the chat. Okay, so this is categories. We've played this once before and it was super fun. So back by popular demand, we have this timer here. So this is 2 minutes. We've got 2 minutes and we have 12 categories and we have to come up with something that begins with the letter K for each of these categories. And last time we did this as a group. So let's maybe if you'd like to unmute yourself, and then we'll just call out the words we think of and we'll go through each category one at a time. Are we ready to go here? Thumbs up? Yeah, okay. Here we go. Yeah, we got this. Ready? Go. Store names.
Kmart.
Yeah.
Kmart, yeah.
Oh, false.
Items you
Ooh.
save up and buy.
Kia.
A Kindle?
Items you
Oh, Kia.
bring.
Yeah, I love that.
A car.
Math terms. Ooh.
Too bad calculus didn't start with a K.
Yeah.
Kilo. Is kilo?
Yeah, kilogram,
Sure.
kilometer.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
math terms, yeah.
Yeah. Reasons to quit your job.
Take care of the parents.
Yeah.
Okay.
Care.
Kick
Kind
Don't
of don't like
like
it.
the
Kick it
boss.
to the
I don't
curb.
like the boss.
Yeah.
Gotta start with the letter
Breakfast
K.
foods.
Breakfast foods. Start with the letter
Kellogg's.
K.
Kellogg's.
Oh,
Kellogg.
Kellogg's.
Corn cereal.
Kraft peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kiwi.
Yeah.
Kiwi. Oh, that's a good one. Personality traits.
Kindness.
Oh, so good. Computer parts. 48 seconds. We got this.
Keyboard.
Oh yeah, keyboard.
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
Whoa.
Things that are black.
Kittens.
Ink.
Black. Keys. The keys on my keyboard are
Yeah.
black.
Yeah.
Or
My
Piano
keys that are
keys.
black.
yeah,
The
doing
piano
the
keys.
Chinese calligraphy, the ink is black.
Yeah.
The ink is black with a K.
Colors. Colors.
Yellow.
Oh no.
Yellow.
Oh
No,
no.
yellow doesn't begin with K.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I'm just stuck on yellow. I'm talking about it.
Uh, oh no. We
Oh
failed.
no. Colors
Oh
got
my
us.
God.
We did pretty good though. Colors got us.
Oh my gosh. That was hard. Letter K.
Yeah,
is.
I
Oh
didn't
no.
realize that it's hard.
We need to
Yeah.
be an artist, oil paints and
Yeah,
whatnot all have really interesting names.
that's right. Yeah.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
They do. I know I was thinking like midnight blue, but the K is not in
Hey,
there.
what color does it that starts with a K?
Coal blue is a color. I used to have a crayon of that.
Okay.
Kohl, but I don't know what that word means. But coal blue. Coal blue.
Tina, would you mind putting that slide back on that it had, that we could have 15 minutes and that sort of thing? I just wanted to take a picture of it. I didn't quite get it. Sorry.
No problem.
Which one? The
15 minutes, and then there was Thursdays. There was a
oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Coming, coming.
Yeah, okay, so
There we go.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just reach out to us,
Yeah.
Bobby, anytime. Yeah. We're happy to connect. And if you wanted to jot down the phone number too, it's 236 361 3480. 236 361 3480. And that's for Poplar Pulmonary Wellness.
Could you also put up that list of your categories?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
So this is a open access on the internet, so you could Google it. It's a categories generator.
Here, I can
Yeah,
copy
Tina's
it into
highlighted the website
chat.
there.
So I'm trying to copy it, but I can't see the
I don't know if I
chat.
can get
Do
that
a
or not.
screenshot, it works
Categories
better.
come up with the names or the answers.
Here, I'm
It
gonna
comes, it
stop the share and put it in
automatically
the chat.
comes up with the questions,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the
and
chat.
it randomly picks the letter of the alphabet. And then, so if you want to play it with groups of people, it's a fun online game to play with a group of people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then if you wanted, we've done it as a group, like us working together, but you could also do it like a little more competitively, where you're personally all writing down your answers and then seeing who was able to answer the most. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
And
you
then
could go in
just
teams of 2 or something.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be good. Yeah.
So the colors I found were khaki and key lime.
Oh, key
Khaki. Oh, key lime.
Oh,
Also good
nice.
for breakfast foods.
And
Khaki. No, I didn't think about it. As I sit here wearing khaki green.
Yes.
It's funny when somebody asks colors, I'm like, oh, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Nope, no K's.
I mean, we seldom use the word khaki or something with.
Yeah.
That's the reason why it took me a while. My brain is not working really.
I'm with you.
They hadn't invented the 200 color crayon pack when I was
Oh.
growing up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah, like I don't know,
That's
we didn't
right.
have khaki. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I've seen army green. I've seen it called army
Yes,
green.
like there is the army green. Yeah.
There is an army green. There is also the hunter green.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
hunter
hunter
green.
green. Yeah.
British green or the Range Rovers.
Oh,
So,
jeez.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to bone up on our colors for the next Better Breathers
Yeah.
Club.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Who
that's
knew?
good. Well,
Yeah.
thank you,
All
ladies,
right.
so
Well,
much for this time. It's
Yeah.
great. Really good.
thank you
Thanks
for
so much.
joining.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Hopefully,
joining. Yeah.
yeah,
Thanks.
hopefully
Thanks,
we take
Tina
home some tips.
and Jenna.
Thanks,
Thanks so
man.
much.
Good to see you, Santa,
Thank you,
Shirley,
Tina. Thank you,
Elsie,
Jenna.
Great
Jeannie.
brain challenge here.
Hey, Elsie, I'll see you next week as well.